Hello, hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
O- Okay, so thanks for coming on such a short notice.
No problem.
I understand that Michiel will join us in about half an hour.
Yeah, he was having another meeting or something. I don't know exactly what the reason is, but he would be replacing me in about half an hour. So,
Mhm.
um, do I need permissions to accept everybody?
I think so. I will give you the. I'll make you the host of the session, so you can invite people in.
Okay, and then once Michiel joins, I will make him host, I'm assuming.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'll try to answer questions if I can answer them, but
Yes,
I don't
please.
really I don't really know what the meeting is about. I mean the webinar.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that'll be a big help. I think that as we go through the topics, that you'll understand, and well, based on your Atlassian knowledge, that you'll be able to respond.
okay, as I understand it, like 75 people might be joining or something like that.
Yeah, honestly, I would be surprised if like a third of them joined. That would be pretty big because well, it has been my experience from webinars so far that not a lot of people arrived.
Mm.
Okay, just a second.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll give you the host, and you
Yep.
can start letting people in.
Okay. I'll mute myself.
Hello, everyone. Okay, let's take a minute or two for those that might be coming a bit later, and then we can begin. Okay, so Let's begin. Could somebody please confirm that you can see the presentation? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. So, welcome to today's webinar. The webinar, How to Have a Healthy and Happy Atlassian Stack, which is mainly about the errors that the Atlassian administrators often make and how to prevent them. We will also look at the best practices and advice from experienced administrators and Atlassian technicians. And we'll go over some of the best practices that are useful to perform on your server or on your cloud or a data center instance. This means that the topics that we will cover will be applicable for all kinds of Atlassian instances. They're not limited to any one deployment. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Kamil Ber, and I've been working with the Atlassian Stack from 2014, mainly as a trainer and a freelance administrator. Along with me are Michiel and Tom, which are system developers and Atlassian developers. And how's the webinar going to be today? Well, I'll be presenting the topics, and the Tom or Michiel will be addressing your questions in the chat. So this shouldn't really be like a lecture or a speech or anything. We would like to have this as more of a workshop. So if you have any comments, ideas, or notes about what we will be talking about here, feel free to write them down in chat. This webinar will be approximately 2 hours long, and we'll have a brief pause after the first hour, which will be approximately around 3 p.m. Well, after an hour. And then we can have a QA session and talk about some of the points that you would like to discuss or have some comments or questions about them. Okay, so what was the idea behind this webinar? Well, there's a lot of webinars going around, and it's pretty hard to find time for some of them. They usually feature things like Atlassian Cloud, Atlassian Forge, or maybe Jira Service Management. So we decided to slow down a little and talk about maintenance and prevention of various incidents that can happen on your Atlassian stack. Now, it might not be really like an entertaining part of the administrator's work, but it's absolutely necessary. And without it, a Jira instance cannot, or a Confluence instance cannot run properly, nor should it be expected to be. So I'd like you to welcome you to this topic where I will feature both my own mistakes and errors with the Atlassian ecosystem and advice from other seasoned Atlassian administrators. And yeah, so you don't have to make the same errors as we did. So what exactly we'll be discussing here? Well, first of all, I would like to go over so-called 7 implementation sins, as in 7 frequent mistakes the Atlassian owners or product owners or Atlassian administrators make, and how to prevent them and what will be their impact. Then I would like to cover a question, how to be a good product owner. I have asked several experts in this area. And this doesn't really mean like agile product owner, but the product owner of the Atlassian stack. So what are the best practices that they give us, or that they would like us to maintain? I will then go over several useful apps that help the Atlassian administrator with his day-to-day job of maintenance and cleaning and keeping everything in check. And then a few bits and pieces about how exactly to perform this maintenance. At the end of this webinar, I will be sharing a few links to what I call recommended reading, which are really interesting articles and books on the topic of maintaining the Atlassian stack in good shape. So let's dive right in. So I'm sure that many of you had heard some of these complaints from your Atlassian users, that either the application is slow or it's too complex, or that they simply don't want to use it because, I don't know, like GitLab was better or something. So I was actually wondering, Uh, which of these phrases or which of these comments have you heard during your day-to-day job? So which one have you encountered from your users? Feel free to write down it in the chat. Right, a lot of people complain about it being too slow because the machine isn't scaled accordingly, for example, or it's got too much apps. That's right. All three. Okay, Joe, I see where you're coming from. Okay, so there's multiple people saying that all three, and yeah, just as I expected, it's pretty much the same everywhere. Too complex. Yeah, that sometimes happens when, for example, Jira goes unchecked or nobody knows what they can access on Bitbucket. Yep, pretty much, pretty much the same experience. Now, users can say this from they can say this from with a variety of reasons. Maybe they really don't like Jira or they don't like Confluence or they are used to simple Excel spreadsheets and Jira suddenly becomes something very complex. They're used to working with Google Docs and suddenly you show them Confluence. So it's pretty common and sometimes it does make sense. But many times they say things like this, maybe even because the Atlassian tools aren't really as well maintained as they could be, or they could use some improving to accommodate the users better and to make a better experience for them. Many times they simply break, they crash, and well, the users are unhappy and the tools can't really be considered healthy. So that's why we've chosen the title, How to Have a Healthy and Happy Atlassian Stack. So what's the opposite? What's the ideal state of things? Well, a healthy tool, the healthy Atlassian Stack, is fast because users can simply click and they will get where they want to get. They also know where to ask for help and they know where to find what they need. And users are also quite fond of using the tool because it actually helps them during their work. It's not just like an obstacle or a hurdle from executing their work. So one of the ways to make your Atlassian stack work like this for your users is to perform regular maintenance or prophylaxis, as some admins say. One of the positive things about this is that it's not about waiting for your, I don't know, Jira to break or get cluttered, but that it's mainly about prevention. What can you do right now and what can you prepare for the future? You can prevent all kinds of, I don't know, troubles that such that can um, that can generate this kind of cluttering or maybe even crashing of the application. And let's begin. What can you do? Or what are the mistakes that some side the Atlassian admins do? Well, first of all, there's too many admins. Now, this is a pretty common scenario actually, because usually the Atlassian stack starts somewhere, so to say, under the table, and one team runs it, and they're quite happy with it. And then other parts of the company observe the tool and say, hey, this might be useful for us. And this goes on, and it just kind of snowballs the users onto the application. But what this means that there's a lot of admins around. Some of them know what they're doing, some don't. And as such, the Atlassian stack can get pretty cluttered and pretty chaotic pretty fast. What this causes? Well, each project behaves different because each Atlassian admin has set up the project so it works for him, right? So you can't really train your users because of this, because there's no standardization. You can't say, okay, so the projects work like this. That doesn't happen. Or perhaps, as an example, a simple task can be called a story in one project, a task in another project, an issue in a third project, maybe I don't know, computer in another project, it's actually quite hard to get the message across of what should be the users be doing or how should be they work with the tool. Also, there's a very often no documentation. There's no auditing. You don't know what the administrators had changed. There's also a viable lack of best practices because, again, these best practices aren't expected to be known by all 20 admins of Jira, perhaps. So usually the first person that gets the Atlassian admin role is the one that requests something as the Atlassian Stack starts to grow, and it's pretty hard. Again, the worst thing that can happen is that the application crashes, maybe because of some wrong configuration or some wrong setting. Now, this is something that I've experienced myself. I've been working for a large telco company in the Czech Republic, where I come from, and there at one time there were over 22 admins. So one of these admins, a Scrum Master, worked with a specialized workflow, and he set up a condition for his project, as he thought at the time, to that only the product owners and Scrum Masters are able to create issues in one specific board. So this workflow was shared in about 15 projects, many unrelated. So what happened is that he set the condition in the workflow, and suddenly all 14 remaining projects, well, they had the same number of issues because new issues couldn't have been created from that point on. So that's what can happen. That's example of what can happen if the number of administrators grows unchecked. Now, what can you do about it? Now, Atlassian recommends to have 1 to 3 administrators based on the size of your Atlassian stack, of your required support, things like that. This way, you manage the knowledge about all the changes that happen on the system in a very small team. The admins know about each other, and each one can actually contribute with something extra. One admin maybe has a background in development, so he can create some interesting Groovy scripts. Another admin might chime in with his sysadmin skills or Linux bash scripting skills, something like that. So it's nice if there's not only one full-time administrator, but that he has so-called deputies that have even other skills like scripting or some DevOps background. And that's definitely not the same as if you gave the administrator permissions to, like, I don't know, 8 people, because there's still like one dedicated admin and 1 or 2 of his dedicated deputies. They share the knowledge, they know what they're doing, and they don't step over each other's toes. So another benefit of this is that they each saw or see the problem that might arise during the day-to-day administration from different perspectives. So it's also helpful to have a, so to say, like a team or a change management team that that your Jira or your Atlassian team will be. Now, this is beneficial because multiple people from various backgrounds should decide about the expansion or scaling of Atlassian tools. Maybe one of them should be a regular user. Maybe another should be like a business person. Another member of this team should be like an admin, or perhaps maybe a stakeholder that's responsible for what comes out of Jira, like reports or something like that. Now, these are 2 different teams. This is not exactly the team of admins. This is like a discussion team or a Atlassian expansion team, because this way you'll make sure as your Jira grows and scales that it'll accommodate everybody's experience in a controlled manner. Last but not least, all of these changes can be done through issues in a dedicated project. So Whenever users want something, they should raise a ticket in a specialized Jira project. It might be a very basic Jira core project, or if you have Jira service management, it can be a small Jira service management portal. This way, as users create their requests, the small administrator team knows about what exactly are they requesting, and they can even advise them how to do it better, or perhaps tell them, no, sorry, we can't do that. Instead of letting an admin from their team, perhaps, make the change and perhaps make everybody else's experience worse. So by having this dedicated help desk project for Atlassian changes, you can audit who requested what and how it was accommodated. What exactly was the solution? It's hard. It's very hard. Mainly if you're used to having many administrators and there's not a lot of will, so to say, to make this necessary change. Now there will be some pains when you when you reduce this number of admins to 2 or 3, but it's absolutely worth it because suddenly your Atlassian instance is under your control. You regain the control as the Atlassian team or the Atlassian product owners. Many times they say things like, I won't break it, why are you taking the admin permission from me? Well, that's understandable, but someone else can break it. And so there needs to be the same rules for everybody. Moving on. This is this is maybe even more frequent than having too many admins. And it's not really limited to Atlassian tools. I'm sure that many of you have encountered this issue. There's no documentation and it becomes this way, or this situation happens because there's, for example, a lot of work, and there's no time for making the documentation, or it's not in the scope of a project, it's not paid, or simply the people that implement the changes don't want to make the necessary documentation because why would they do it if it works and that's what matters, right? Well, no. The fact that the application runs, that doesn't mean that it will always run, right? Many times the infrastructure on which the application runs changes. Maybe some other things outside of your control might change. Let's say the database or the operating system or API or things like that. Maybe you upgrade Jira one day and it breaks your integrations because it simply changed throughout its lifetime. So the tool in of itself that was assembled by the previous group that didn't leave any documentation may not work. And I'm sure that you know that you can incorporate some really complex integrations in Bitbucket or in Jira. Let's say some database extensions via Elements Connect or Table Grid, or maybe some REST API integrations with other systems, various scripts through script runner, or maybe not even through script runner. There's a lot of space where things can go wrong just because they weren't documented. Like they weren't documented. Nobody created the anything helpful that should help transition to work to somebody else. Let's say a new admin. Now, Atlassian tools can be customized a lot, and some responsibility goes hand in hand with this. So if there's like a complex process and it's not documented, let's say an integration with third-party software, the new people in the team without documentation or maybe without the person that implemented these integrations won't know how to work with it. Or perhaps there may be a lot of scripts on the instance and the new members of the Atlassian team have no idea about Groovy scripts. This happens quite a lot because us Atlassian admins many times don't have much development experience. And again, the whole application might stop working because of this. And as a reason, the company might stop trusting Atlassian tools simply because a critical process or a critical integration with the Atlassian system doesn't work or stopped working. So how to solve this? So first of all, the basis for for documentation should be your Jira project, where we record every small change. This is helpful because there's not a need to create like huge documentations. They're all recorded in the tickets. If there are any complex settings or complex projects or integrations, you can use Confluence for it. Except that when your Confluence crashes, there's not much not much you can do. So you can make it on your documentation platform like SharePoint or something. The point is to have everything that's, well, pretty much complex, like a third-party REST API integration or some complicated scripts, always documented somewhere, preferably with an explanation that your average non-developer would understand. This way, you'll be able to transfer the knowledge to new members of your team, which is very useful. You don't want them to learn the hard way. At the minimum, workflows should be documented, maybe some complex processes, integrations with third-party software, and of course, scripts. Now, I'm sorry for this very disturbing picture, but the point is, the Atlassian ecosystem has several thousand add-ons available for its applications, and it's a lot. They cover all kinds of use cases, and they all can be installed for a trial period from 7 days to 30 days and even more for free. And some of them are even free after this trial period. So it's pretty easy to actually fall for the chance to try them all out. But well, add-ons usually add various new elements into the Jira view or Confluence view, which can confuse the users. They create new buttons, they create new modules into issues, they add various custom fields with weird information or strange names. All these things make the users confused. What this causes is they won't want to work with the tool because it'll be simply too complicated. Some other add-ons are very demanding on system resources. Let's say there's Script Runner, where you can easily write code that might cycle in on itself and create a memory leak. Maybe it will erase Jira's cache or indexes, or maybe create a lot of API calls. So the system is overworked. It's swamped with API calls, and the performance gets worse. Or perhaps EasyBI, a reporting tool that's so demanding on the system resources that its developer actually recommends to create a separate Java process for the add-on. There's many other candidates like Big Picture or Zephyr or X-Ray, where Atlassian had documented all kinds of memory leaks in the past. So, and because the trial version eventually runs out after 30 days or 60 days or however you manage to extend it, the price of the whole tool set might rise. Many times what happens is that when you renew your Atlassian subscription or your Atlassian maintenance, you often pay even for the add-ons that not a lot of people use or have, let's say, redundant functions. This happens a lot with add-ons for workflows like JMWE, Jira Workflow Toolbox, automation for Jira, things like that. And the thing is, that the person actually buying or paying for the solution, usually someone at the procurement or something, only sees the high costs of the tool. And well, the product owner or the business owner can then say, okay, that's too expensive. I don't want that. And that can simply happen because of unchecked add-on growth. Now, I've mentioned only good add-ons, like quality add-ons. The worst add-ons can cause all kinds of trouble, like conflict with other add-ons, which can even cause a crash of the application. So, how to solve this or how to go about it? Well, Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket can do a lot of things out of the box, and you don't have to install apps to accommodate these various use cases. I'm not saying do not use add-ons, but before you do, it's good to learn about the limits of the tool and that it can't really do the requested use case on its own. Here, it actually helps to contact Atlassian support, which will have every interest on telling you how to do it or how to perform or implement the use case without buying an extra app. Many times, even processes that aren't really the standard features of Jira can be done without any add-ons, like having a basic service desk or a basic CMDB database, maybe an onboarding project for HR or a CRM solution. That can all be done in Jira without any additional add-ons, even though there are many add-ons that are named after these use cases. Also, before any add-on is installed, the administrator console that I mentioned before, which had all these members from different backgrounds, they should check it out first. That's why it has so many members, right? The business person can first make a quick check on how many people will actually use the add-on, or whether it might be useful to federate Jira for some specific use case, like a CMDB or CRM. The administrator can evaluate if there's some other tool that already supports this use case. The sysadmin can check during the trial period of using the add-on if it how much of the system resources it uses and perhaps scale the application accordingly. You can get a lot of help with choosing a good add-on from the Atlassian marketplace. You can find several useful marks or how to say several well, there are several pieces of information you can get from the Atlassian marketplace when you're evaluating if said add-on is good or bad. So these are the few points that you can check when you are vetting an application and if you'd like to use it. Well, first of all, there's the top vendor badge. I think it was replaced by participants of the Atlassian cloud bug hunting program. I'm not sure, but for a long time there was this badge called top vendor. And what this top vendor badge meant was that the add-on by this vendor are deployed on many instances. They have active support. They have provided an end user license agreement, and that they have been successfully vetted by Atlassian. Many times, these top vendors also have both server and cloud add-ons. There's also the rating of the add-on based on the number of stars given by the users. There's the number of deployments, which in reality is a little bit higher because I don't think that evaluation and trial versions are counted into the number of deployments. Another important part is the supported tab, which usually happens when the tool has a service desk or an active support during workdays, or maybe in 24/7. And what's also very useful is the list of versions the add-on is available for, because what this means is that when you click the more versions link, you will see how long have the add-on been developed? And this way you can get the idea whether if it's something new, largely untested, and with no history of development, or whether it's something that's been here for 5, 6, 7 years, and it's safe to use. Again, I have to recommend the Atlassian support desk, where they can help you with all kinds of questions, inquiries, and ideas that you might have for your Atlassian Stack. Okay, so this is mainly a Jira thing, but it can happen on other applications in their own way. Now, creating new projects in Jira is quite simple, but it creates a lot of clutter that you need to clean up later. And also, if it's so simple to create a new project, how do you create reports over it? How do you create reliable data sets from it? How do you do it? Because the number of Jira projects can grow really fast, and Jira can become a very slow and cumbersome application. Now, what does this mean exactly? Well, no user wants to work with a 20 status workflow, or perhaps fill a form with like 10 mandatory fields. Users will not want to work with Jira, or will simply fill nonsense into these fields. This way, you'll get reports, or perhaps you get results that are useless in reports, because users simply want to get through the process as fast as they can. And the more objects there are in the database, the larger it becomes, yes. But some types of objects may even cause the searching, filtering, or maybe even displaying issues in Jira really slow. And again, the application then becomes slow to use. Other thing is what this does to the administrator. There can be, for example, custom fields with the same name but a different use. Or maybe duplicate workflows. Nothing has descriptors. And what this creates in the Jira Administrator section is a mess. It creates a huge list of objects that you have no documentation for, don't know who requested it or who requested them, and they're simply hard to use. You're pretty much afraid to delete anything because you don't know what can it affect. And when there's so many workflows and so many custom fields with so many kinds of names, you can't create standard reporting over them because each team works different. They create different types of data. Now, I have to warn you, this is something that really happened in Jira I worked with. And it was this. What you can see on the left side is a Jira issue screen. These are all fields that needed to be filled when an issue was created and when it was edited. Now, I haven't worked exactly in this project, but I think it's quite easy to imagine that it wouldn't really be easy. There's, for example, multiple story point fields, I think. No, not sure. But this workflow on the right, I saw in a Atlassian administrator grouped on LinkedIn, and I'm told it was a real workflow, but I doubt it because there are statuses with the same name and it all looks well weird. There's like 2 done statuses, like done and done. But it isn't really as hard to imagine that this could actually happen in a production Jira. Like a good, agile, simplified workflow. I have no idea how users would work with this. So, well, what can you do? What can you do to prevent this? Well, if you have a similar Jira, it can be fixed. There's no reason to worry. First of all, It's good to have objects that have very general names, like workflow statuses can be general because their specific use will come from the project or the workflow they are used in. For example, you can have a status called, I don't know, in testing. So you can use the status wherever there's some testing going. You don't need to label it with, let's say, in agile testing or in waterfall testing. That makes no sense. You will simply add the in testing status into a waterfall or an agile workflow. Same goes for custom fields. You don't need to have several fields with names like end date, due date, finish date. You don't. Many times. Same goes for issue types. Many times only task, subtask helps a lot. Maybe epic, story task, subtask. It's good to start small and not create an issue type for every request. Or there's no sense in having a field called testing resolution if you have a simple resolution field. Or I don't know, for story issue types like business story, development story. Why would you have that if you have one issue type called story? You can record all other data in the issue or in some other issue fields like components. The reason for this is that as the names of the objects get specific, the less they can be reused. And again, what exactly are these custom fields and statuses used for? Well, will be understandable from the context of the project. If you have a project for testers, they don't need to have testing resolution, like I said before, because everybody gets the idea what the field resolution is actually used for when working on the testing project. There's also a lot of schemes in Jira, like workflow schemes, issue type schemes. It's good to have these standardized for similar processes, like the same set of issue types for development, similar workflow for testing, and so on. The goal is to have as few schemes and as few objects as possible, because this way the administrator's work gets way easier. It's also nice to use the create with share configuration button when creating projects, because then you can create a project from the same template, and it helps the standardization. Bottom line is, the less objects there are in Jira, the easier is the work for the admin, and the clearer is the work for the users. By the way, this type of cluttering is often caused by too many administrators, which create their projects and workflows however they see fit. I mentioned that something similar can happen in other applications, and yeah, you can create all kinds of spaces, all kinds of templates, all kinds of, let's say, Komala workflows in Confluence. So it's not really limited to Jira. This can happen anywhere. This is actually a really interesting result of an experiment where Atlassian created several enterprise Jira instances with with thousands or tens of thousands of objects, and then they doubled every type of object, so they see if it slows down the instance considerably. We can see that as the number of custom fields rose, it had a higher impact on creating issues, searching issues, or maybe even viewing them in the issue navigator. The number of issues had a significant impact, but well, the custom fields were the main culprit. I very much recommend the video on YouTube, 5 Secrets of Jira Performance at Scale, which also sheds some light on how to maintain your instance in a good shape. So let's move on to Jira projects. As I said, creating new projects in Jira is really easy. You simply create them from these templates from Atlassian, and then, well, what do you do then? So a better way to create project is to use the create the shared configuration button. So what does it do? Well, the main problem is that as you create a new project in Jira, all kinds of new workflows and screens are created, which clutter the instance. So when you want to edit the project, you have to change them and switch them around. The old screens and screen schemes remain in your database, and you'll have a hard time searching for a specific screen because of that. It really makes the administrative work hard. So by maintaining all kinds of unused projects or spaces, bogs down the instance. It becomes larger because there's a lot of old attachments. There's a lot of issues on the background which make searching difficult. And in turn, database becomes larger and the file system becomes more demanding. With it, costs for the necessary resources are higher, things like that. This is a big issue for Confluence, for example, where once you install it, it has an automatic backup system where it backups itself twice a day, and the infrastructure can quickly run out of file space. Well, not to mention that searching for everything becomes hard because the objects share the same name, and the projects have similar names. It's quite hard. So what to do about this? First, as I mentioned, it's good to utilize the Create with Shared Configuration button when on Jira. This is a tool that helps with standardization a lot because what it does is that it creates a project with a similar setting or a similar set of schemes as another project. This helps the idea of creating project templates because not only you can define with other stakeholders in the company on how should these templates or standardized projects look. For example, a service desk for clients, a development project for agile testers. They will all have the same setting. You create a template, like a baseline project, and when you want to create a new project, you simply go with the create with share configuration setting, and the project behaves the same as your template. The good thing about this is that if there's a decision about changing this model, you can change all of these projects by changing one scheme. So it's quite helpful when standardizing. The way this problem can be mitigated is that you can document your projects because you will always have the who wanted to create a project, why, and what is used for, or does it contain any private data in one place. This doesn't have to be like a complicated documentation, just a few questions that the users will have to fill out before you create projects for them. This way, you can find out very interesting things, perhaps if there's, let's say, GDPR or privacy shield protected data in one of your Jira projects or Confluence spaces, or whether the old project with the 1,000 issues wasn't simply a testing project for an add-on. So by archiving projects, spaces, or repositories, you will gain some, let's say, you'll make your Atlassian instance more compact, more clear, and the tool will be much faster. You can do this archiving via, well, multiple ways. You can either make these projects invisible by putting a permission scheme only for the admins, or you can copy them out via various add-ons such as a configuration manager, or you can back up your old instance, confirm the integrity of the backup, and then delete the old project spaces and repos. You can create an archive instance of Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket if you have a developer license. And on this archive instance, you can put your old projects and spaces. And then you delete this data from production. Another problem is no training. The Atlassian toolset has really evolved from software for backtracking or meeting notes for meetings to a very large scale of uses, right? A lot of non-IT people can use Confluence, for example, like the sales department, the accounting department, management, things like that. Now, the problem of no training is usually caused by the by the lack of time or the budget for these trainings. But I think the right question should be how much time and how much money will it cost when the users aren't trained, when they don't know how to use the tool properly or that are afraid to use it. I think it's wrong to assume that everybody can use such, quote unquote, simple applications or that he will eventually learn in time. And even the Atlassian admin, if there's only one, should be the only person in charge of the tool, and to let the others just, I don't know, learn for themselves. Even he can work on uh, recruiting a deputy of sorts. What this causes is that, all kinds of troubles that we mentioned in the start. Jira, Confluence, or Bitbucket aren't 100% intuitive tools, and it's necessary to teach the users how to use it. For example, when somebody transitions from Wunderlist or Excel or some Trello to Jira, it's a whole different experience, and there's a lot of new buttons, numbers, and fields that they don't know what they represent. So if nobody explained this to the users will not want to use the tool. It'll be simply too complex. Or maybe they'll use it wrong and they'll cause all kinds of mistakes and errors that others will then have to fix. Many times I've also encountered a situation where users weren't even able to request any changes because either nobody helped them or they didn't know where to ask for these changes, or maybe there wasn't even such a place. There wasn't like an official Atlassian support team in the company. And there's also the bus factor. What does happen if the administrator of the instance cannot work? What if he cannot accommodate the changes that the users request when nobody else knows how to work with the application? Now, everybody should have a chance to learn with the tool, right? In the company I worked in and that I have mentioned, we teach Jira and Confluence once per month. And once the majority of users who had never been on Atlassian training, by the way, learned about the tool or went through the courses, we have switched to 1 or 2 trainings per quarter. During these first few months, all of the users that used Jira and Confluence in some way came to our trainings. They all acquainted themselves with the tool. And also a lot of, well, business stakeholders came onto these trainings. This was their first chance to see the application, find how to incorporate their use case into the application, and understand the place of the Atlassian toolset in the company. Once this happens, there will be a much bigger adoption of the tools, and well, if there's decisions about budget cuts, maybe the Atlassian tools won't be the one that will get the X. Another point is that the documentation of standard processes for users can be very helpful. Let's say how to request a new password or how to request a change. Have a very basic help desk, a basic Confluence page available for the users and inform them about it. So the users should know where to ask for help if they don't know how to work with a tool, or maybe they want to implement their own use case. Again, this is very simple. Have a dedicated Jira project or an email for the Atlassian support team, and it needs to be clearly communicated whenever the new user starts working in Jira or Confluence. Also, there should be one other additional administrator that can help if the main admin isn't available to work with the application or when he leaves. Maybe he can help in this request project. This doesn't have to be a dedicated Atlassian admin, like I said at the start, if you're considering where do I find another full-time employee. No, this can be somebody that works in testing or in development that when the time comes will be able to take care of the instance until the dedicated admin comes back. It's actually very useful to have several of these power users. These can be, let's say, educated ambassadors of the tool that can train their teams. Right. So I think this speaks for itself. Upgrading the Atlassian applications. When an upgrade fails, it really matters if you had any backups made, but generally the rollback is difficult and sometimes it can even be impossible. Now, all of the Atlassian tools have generally two options how to upgrade them. One of them is fast from the installer. It's called a rapid method. The second is a slower method through usage of a testing instance, so-called fallback method. Okay, well, I don't think we need to mention that the users like would want to work with a tool because there will be no tool, or that the tools are slow because there will be, well, they won't work. Many times what happens is that critical add-ons stop working in a new version of the application. This happened to, for example, Tempo Planner, which had a significant change of feature set in the past few years. Or maybe new application might not support one of the system components that it supported before. There was a problem with EasyBI, for example, where the newer version of EasyBI required a whole different database driver. So all kinds of these problems might happen. What can go wrong? Well, there's a lot of what can go wrong if an upgrade, well, gets out of hand. Apps might not work. There will be well, the whole application might stop working. So how to solve this? How to solve this situation? How to be prepared for an upgrade so it doesn't break anything? Well, the absolute start should be regular backups. That means a regular backup of the install folder, home folder, and the database using the database native tools. They can be backed up on an external or a network share drive. It doesn't matter. The administrator should know how to restore this type of backup should they need to. It's also necessary to be informed about the changes in the new version. Atlassian has very good release notes and upgrade notes, which cover in detail which system components will be, for example, deprecated, or which features will change, things like that. Release notes are usually changes that will affect the users, and upgrade notes are usually what affects the system or the application itself. When on cloud, Atlassian also has documentation on what's going to be rolled onto these systems in the following months. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. It's also necessary to inform your users about the change so they know that, for example, I don't know, from 6 p.m. onward, they will not be able to log into Jira and all of their work will be lost, just to set right expectations. Again, documentation of various special features like integrations that are necessary to test out first before you perform the upgrade on your production instance. It's also useful to have an upgrade checklist and document files that have changed. files that you have changed that you might need to change on the new upgraded instance. And well, upgrade on a test instance first. It works like this. You create a copy of your production data, a separate database. You will move these production data on another instance, install the new application, and perform some user acceptance tests on whether the testing instance being on the new version works right. If everything works right on this test instance, then you can do an upgrade of production. So these were the 7 application sins, to name it like that. Too many admins, having no documentation, having lots of apps, being not really taking care of the objects, like issue types, workflows, screens, things like that, not training your users, or rushing an upgrade. All right, we have 3 p.m. and let's have a 10-minute pause before we move on to the next section. All right, so we'll resume the webinar in 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, welcome back to the webinar. We got some extra questions. All right, so there was, for example, a question on from Brittany, as in, I have too many issue types over the years, more and more have been added. So how do I start it out without causing issues? Right, so it's quite useful to first, when cleaning up the issue types, it's good to browse the usage of each of these projects, these objects. I'm saying objects because this is applicable not only for issue types, but also for statuses or custom fields. In Jira, you can create a JQL query that searches for all occurrences of this particular issue type. And at some point, you will see that some issue types are used more and more. They're used in multiple projects for many, many, many issues. And there might be some of these issue types or statuses that are used only, well, maybe even on like 10 issues or in one project, or maybe the project itself is even deprecated. So usually I would start this evaluation by searching for this type of object. Let's say issue type equals to something, and then see how many issues really use this issue type. Same goes with statuses. You can go through the list of statuses and evaluate how much are these statuses in use. Now, this might be a little bit tricky because some issues might not stay in a particular status for a long time. So a good way to evaluate, for example, the usage of statuses is to see in how many workflows are they used and how many of these workflows are actually active. Same goes with custom fields. You can create an easy query in the JQL search that says something like name of custom field is not empty, and you will get a list of issues with with a value in this custom field. So if a custom field is really used, you will see by using this search, maybe you'll find that the custom field is used only in a few issues, and its value can be easily moved into another much more used custom field. So that's my answer. You're welcome. There's a question by Petar Sabev, which Michelle already answered, but I think we can address it from another perspective. Well, the need for additional projects comes from the business requirements, and by that I mean something like this. When you are adding multiple workflows into your Jira project, into one Jira project, you usually do it because one issue type has a different life cycle than another issue type, right? So it needs to have another process. So if one time you discover that you have such a distinctive use case or such a distinctive business need to be implemented in Jira that it differs a lot from whatever you have already implemented, such as you need a service desk, but all of your other projects like are agile boards or Jira core projects, then it makes sense to create a whole different project. But it might not be an issue only of having a different project type. It might be an issue of perhaps security. So you might want to have a HR project containing GDPR sensitive data, and you want to let only a select group of people inside this project because you don't want to show the, let's say, the CVs and the mandate rates or the salaries to everybody. That makes sense. So in this case, you would definitely need a new project because you would have a whole new set of permissions for this project. So you have a need for a very distinctive permission scheme for this new business case. So you create a new Jira project because accommodating, like, I don't know, issue security for another big project you have in which you would insert your HR issues. That's just not practical at all. So to simplify it or to sum it all up, if you have a sufficiently distinct business case, it may warrant a new project, just like having a distinctive life cycle of a task. It might require a new workflow. So that's my point of view. And finally, there's a question from Laure. If we are on a cloud version, do we need to back up? And doesn't the upgrade happen automatically on cloud? It does. It absolutely does. Atlassian allows you to create a cloud backup. And last I remember, even to download it, I think, but I'm not very sure about this. But the upgrades happen automatically. And it's much more necessary, I would say, to keep informed about the new changes that are going to be rolled out. So the advice about backups and about upgrades applies mainly to data center or perhaps server. It's simply a good practice. All right, so before we move on, are there any other questions, comments, or ideas about the topics that we've covered? You can write in chat, or you can simply ask while you have the time for it. All right, so if there are any questions or comments or something that you would like to add to what we've covered, let's move on. The next topic is called being a good Atlassian product owner, where I've asked several, I would say, Atlassian, I don't know, maybe celebrities or famous administrators and trainers about what does it really mean to be a good Atlassian product owner. So the first of these was Matt Dorr, the author of the Practical Jira Administration and Practical Jira Plugins books, and he mentioned that you need a governance document that you can show to your users to set the right expectations. This is a pretty important point because as new users enter the company, they will request all kinds of changes and specific use cases and security requirements. And by having a governance document where all the important stakeholders from various departments are signed, you can simply point these new requests to the governance document and say, okay, so these are the rules, and everybody agrees on them. Sorry, we can't accommodate this request. Another good advice is that you should always have resolved issues with resolution and unresolved issues without resolution, and that can be simply achieved by writing two easy filters in Jira. I think it's a status category equals to done, and the resolution equals to empty, something like that. This is important because in, for example, agile projects or Jira software projects, issues that are unresolved but actually have a resolution might not appear on many boards because a lot of boards have this default setting in their filter that they will show only unresolved issues. So having these issues in check, as in resolved, closed issues, green status issues with a resolution, and blue and yellow, or maybe gray on cloud, status issues should not have a resolution. And this can be easily done via post functions and some screens with resolutions. So Matt definitely has a good point here. I've also asked Boris Berenberg from Atlas Authority, another Atlassian partner. Now, I agree that understanding the business challenges first is important, as users can bring to you various issues that they think they already know how to fix in Jira. In the past, I have worked with a Scrum Master that wanted to have resolution set in the middle of a workflow, and he then wanted to progress to in progress statuses, yellow statuses as the workflow continued. And he said that this is the only solution. So if he was an admin, he would probably create this type of workflow. But we've discussed the issue with him and found out about his business process and that it can be accommodated in Jira even without using a resolution in the middle of a workflow. And setting expectations aligns with the governance document Matt had mentioned. Here, in this governance document, there should be an outline of what you can and can't do for the users, as in what are the rules, because users will definitely want administrator permissions or permissions to dangerous features like, I don't know, deleting issues or bulk change. By the way, having the delete issues permission and bulk change global permission is a recipe for disaster, and many admins don't even have these kinds of permissions at all times. Anyway, back to the governance document. It's good to spend some time defining these limitations and writing about them in this governance document, simply to set the right expectations. I've also asked our CEO, Francis, and he replied to me that it's good to keep it simple, which if we look at the opposite, this is clearly a case of not having too many workflow steps, not having too many fields, having clear Confluence space configuration, as in where to go to find important documents. And users will also enjoy working in the tool more if everything is kept simplified, and they won't need to spend too much time searching for the necessary issues or the documents. Also, when users come to you with feedback, they need to know that the administrators are actually listening to them. Because the longer the users wait, well, they might develop anxiety about using the tool, or they might refuse to use the tool. This, of course, doesn't mean that you need to implement everything the users want. This simply means that you need to talk to them and discuss the issue with them as soon as possible, understand their requests. The user engagement will become higher, and maybe users will even promote the tool and recommend it to other teams. Rachel Wright, the author of Jira Strategy Admin Workbook, which I very much recommend, only recommends what we have already went through in the webinar. To have a change management project for tracking changes, for documentation, some auditing, and having a lot of test environments. Maybe to test the upgrade, or for the users to play around in, or even archive your projects and spaces and repos on. Let's go through a list of useful apps or add-ons for admins, and there are definitely a few. Power Admin, a free add-on from Botron, is a tool that's used to document or to enable a clear overview of which objects are used. It will show us where are various workflows used, where are multiple statuses used, how much a group is used, how much a filter. You get the idea. The point why Power Admin could be useful is that you can safely delete all kinds of objects. If you see that they aren't used, chances are you can safely delete them. You can do this even in the regular Jira UI, but you need a lot of clicking around and it's not very pleasant. So Power Admin helps with all this. It also audits the add-on usage on the project level. This helps, for example, if you're using several workflow tools like JMWE or JSU, because Power Admin will map out, okay, so you're using 10 post functions from JMWE and 4 validators from, I don't know, script runner. So this way, you can actually get to the point where you can safely remove or stop paying for an add-on simply because you're not using it. It'll also help you rename custom fields. Whereas if you would rename your custom fields from the admin interface, you can disrupt some of your filters and boards. Power Admin will simply rename the custom fields in all kinds of filters and configurations. Yeah, it's great and it's free. User Switcher is also free. User Switcher helps when you need to log on as another user, which is pretty good if you want to make sure if you have set the right permissions and rights on a particular project, or on a particular space, or for a particular repository. You don't need to change passwords if you need to log as another user. So User Switcher for Jira and User Switcher for Confluence are both free add-ons. So I can definitely recommend them. And there's also Switch User for Bitbucket and Switch User for Bamboo, which are paid add-ons, but they're fairly cheap and they can help admins in, well, in various situations. Optimizer for Jira is also a very interesting cleanup tool. It's mainly used to clean up unused Jira objects like issue types, workflows, screens. It's really good if, so there was this question about how do I find out which issue types are used, right? So what Optimizer for Jira does is that it creates a list of statuses or issue types or workflows or schemes based on their usage. It will, for example, create a list of custom fields by their usage on an issue, as in it will count how many times a value has been entered into a custom fields on your Jira instance, and on how many screens is the custom field used. And it allows sorting, and this way you can easily determine which ones to delete. It can do the same thing for, well, almost every object in Jira. This way, the database becomes more compact, faster to search through. It saves extra work for the administrators. It also helps with project archiving because you'll easily determine which projects haven't been used for some time. And it also allows a direct access to your logs on your file system. And it even has a switch user feature. Optimizer for Jira is not free, it's a paid add-on. It's available for cloud and for server and data center, of course. And it's a really handy tool if you want to perform yearly or bi-yearly cleanups and maintenance. User management for Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket by TechTime are application used for bulk user changes. So why would you want to use them? Well, it resolves the situation where you are, for example, nearing your user limit and you need to clear up valuable licenses. But which users should you deactivate? These add-ons are useful in that they filter users based on criteria like last login before or after, active or non-active, members of a group, and so on. This way, you can easily find users that haven't signed up at all or haven't signed up for, let's say, 6 months. And it's very probable that they're not using the application at all. Or maybe even external users that haven't signed in for 3 months, which again helps with security. And you can deactivate them in bulk. You can also automate this, so you don't need to think about a regular user cleanup. For example, you can set a rule that says deactivate all users that haven't logged in the past month. Or it can simply create an issue for a regular cleanup for you. There's an interesting feature in this add-on in it that it also makes the job of moving users between directories easier, which is useful if you want to migrate your users from Intel or Jira to Crowd, for example. Better content archiving, it's similar to Optimizer for Jira, but for Confluence. It's a tool that periodically reports on pages that haven't been read or edited for some time, which helps with keeping only the actually used or read content inside Confluence, keeping the clutter and obsolete pages out. It also builds a quality index for every space, which is based on the pages that haven't been read or edited for a time you choose, like pages that haven't been read by anyone for 6 months. It sends a list of these pages to the space administrators. And what also helps is that this add-on can move content to an archive space, which can also be automated, and you can keep only the up-to-date files on Confluence. Configuration Manager is a very popular add-on. It creates backups not only of the whole Jira instance, but also of separate projects. This makes project migration much more easier, as you don't need to rely on the Jira project export tool, which might be difficult to use. It is. You can migrate projects with their configuration and all of their issues, including issue data and attachments, which really helps with instance merging. You can migrate boards, dashboards, filters. I've used Configuration Manager to merge an old Jira 6 instance with a Jira 7.13 instance. It wasn't very hard, thanks to the add-on. And it also contains a tool called Integrity Checks, which checks filters and boards for inaccurate database data and prevent them from being migrated. This module, Integrity Check, can be also downloaded for free. The upside of merging instances with Configuration Manager is that if there are any significant errors, the whole process will roll back and will not leave the data half migrated. And finally, you have Script Runner, honorable mention. Now, there's a certain prejudice against Script Runner, which I also had, and that you need to know how to code to use it effectively. And I'm not a developer, so it was pretty hard for me to accept Script Runner as something that I could use. But thankfully, Adaptavist, the developer of Script Runner, knows this and knows that it's an obstacle. So they have a library of scripts you can easily recycle and reuse, along with a Groovy tutorials library to help you with the basics. There's also several other parts of the app that don't require you to know how to code, such as behaviors. Behaviors are a part of Script Runner that modify field visibility, accessibility, or dependence. For example, you might keep some fields read-only while keeping them on a Jira screen, or make them automatically fill, or make a field appear mandatory in case another field has been filled, and so on. Script Runner also helps with several useful JQL commands that Jira doesn't support yet, like querying or attachments, or searching for issues assigned to inactive users, find issues with a specific link type, and so on. There are also several built-in scripts that don't need you to write any code. They can enable doing specific, yet at times important commands, like changing ownerships of dashboards, copying custom field value between fields, view all scripts you use, or log as a different user. So that was it for the add-ons. And the last part, it's about performing maintenance, or how to go about it. Performing regular maintenance or cleanup is necessary on both cloud and server instances. Maybe in case of server, it will take some more time, as you will be performing the maintenance of the system too. We covered the reason for regular maintenance in one of the previous points at the start of the webinar, where we mentioned how it creates problems with the system for the administrators and users alike if the instance isn't maintained, how it can slow down the application and bloat the system. So what constitutes a proper maintenance procedure? Well, first of all, it should be scheduled. Some operations may be necessary to do twice a year, some every quarter. But if possible, it's pretty good to have a proper overall Atlassian Stack maintenance at least once or twice per year. Also, before you perform this maintenance, it's very much recommended to take a backup of your current configuration. Ideally a database dump in case you delete something important so you can restore it. The maintenance may consist of at least these steps I have outlined to the right. Some of these might be more beneficial to do more frequently, such as clean up unused objects or audit users and groups. Some may require a lot of preparation, like upgrading. The first thing that you should check during this maintenance are unused objects. These might be issue types, workflows, custom fields, screens, or even scripts. The problem with these is that they aren't used, but still bloat the application configuration and make all kinds of reporting difficult to do. Various apps help you clean these objects and find their usage, such as Power Admin or Optimizer for Jira. But even if you don't have these add-ons, usually you can recognize unused object in the Jira UI easily. This takes some more time than if you would use an app. One specific note about custom fields, you should always try to have very general field names, as we have mentioned before. The same applies to statuses, so that they can serve all kinds of projects. So in case you decide to delete the field and move its contents to another one, Script Runner can help. We have already mentioned that it's a special built-in script that copies data from one field to another. Another part of this cleanup should be auditing the apps. This can not only save money, but also improve the application's performance. Again, tools like Power Admin or Admin Toolbox can help determine app usage, but as every app is different, there is no clear-cut way of determining what should be removed or not. So we can say that there are three types of add-ons on which we can demonstrate how to audit their usage. One of them, and a very specific one, are Jira workflow editors. I named them like that because they're often used not only to improve Jira workflows themselves, but to automate various processes. These include JMWE, JSU, automation for Jira, script runner, create on transition, and so on. These are easy to remove since they have a visible trace in Jira workflows or in the application settings, detectable from Power Admin or Admin Toolbox, and are easy to remove, standardize, or replace. The second one are apps that provide very distinctive features, such as project planning in big picture or advanced roadmaps, using Gantt charts in structure, using a CMDB in Insight or team calendars in Confluence. Usually it's clear to determine if they are being used. And that is if you would ask the stakeholders first, like, do you use any of these objects or add-ons? But you can also check how is the application used. Are there multiple portfolios in advanced roadmaps, but almost none of them are updated, are like a year old? Or are there programs in big picture that suffer the same fate? Because this way, you can rule out to what extent the app is actually used and then ask the users when you're not sure. The third types are very specific feature extensions that you can't easily search for, maybe some dashboard gadgets or extra macros. It's also hard to find a specific stakeholder that you could ask because any user can use them. In this case, on a data center or server, database search for the name of the add-on, I have mentioned the rich filters in the picture, should give you a list of all occurrences. Checking users and groups is one of the maintenance steps that should occur at least every quarter, because revoking application access reduces chances of sensitive information leaking, just like saving on licensing costs. So these reduced costs can be felt on monthly cloud payments almost immediately. The users you might want to look for are those that haven't signed in for, let's say, 3 to 6 months, or maybe those that haven't signed in at all. In case of those that have never signed in, those might be users that were given all the necessary licenses and accesses, but are using only one application, right? So they might have a license for Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket, and might only use Confluence. So it's good to confirm the last sign-on in every application and remove only application access group if necessary. It's also good to pay attention to users that have been only recently created but haven't signed in yet, so you don't accidentally remove them. This is a bit harder to do without apps because you can't filter in Jira by the last sign-on or if the user has never signed in. For this purpose, I've already recommended the add-on User Management for Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket by TechTime. It really helps in this use case. Archiving is useful when all data isn't needed anymore, or you're not sure about deleting it, but you'd rather not have it take a disk space or database space. You don't want to keep obsolete configuration objects, or simply you want to declutter the application. In this case, it's perfectly okay to remove the objects on a separate application instance via a developer license or a configuration file. So you can use, for example, for Jira projects, the configuration manager. You'll transfer the projects elsewhere. These might be Jira issues or projects, Confluence spaces, or Bitbucket repositories. And they can be imported again if need be, or deployed on a separate instance used for archival purposes. So how to approach archiving? Well, whatever you archive and remove, you need to have the stakeholders' permission and to be sure that they're really not using those spaces or repositories. Some documentation might look old, but people still keep using it. They're simply reading it, nobody's editing it. So that's a good first step, to confirm with the users that those objects aren't really used. Second, you determine the last date updated, which you can achieve by sorting issues by their updated date or checking the last page update in the Confluence space. And finally, the archiving itself. A low-budget option is to use a native database backup whose integrity you confirm on a separate instance. Once this backup is secure, you can remove the archived objects. A more granular way and a more expensive one is to export projects via Configuration Manager or spaces and repositories via the native capabilities of Confluence and Bitbucket. Again, confirming their usage and their integrity in the process of archiving. Checking logs is again something that could be done every quarter and maybe even more frequently. The idea here is to discover persistent errors and problems that might cause more damage in the future. When searching through the logs, you will find each log message labeled with short descriptions like info, error, debug, and so on. These titles, simply put, they represent the severity of the error. And as such, you should investigate any warn, error, and fatal messages, with the latter two being more serious than those before. This goes both for server and data center. In Jira and Confluence, you can use a native support tool called the log checker, which scans a log file and connects the found errors to a knowledge base articles or bugs logged on Atlassian's bug tracker instance. They can also send you a periodic report from the log scanner or email, so you can check the issues without waiting for the log to finish. There might be some cases, mainly in enterprise environments with data center deployments, where you can't access the logs yourself. In this case, there are applications that will allow you to read the log, like Optimizer for Jira or Script Runner. But my personal recommendation is a free app from Atlassian called DB Directory Browser. This allows you to browse through the home directory and watch the log file in real time. I think it's called like DB and Home Directory Browser. It's really useful and it's free. On data center, this is something that in cloud deployment you will not be able to do because you don't have access to the application server. But on data center and on server, you can do the server inspection yourself. There are several things to keep an eye out for when inspecting the servers on where your applications run. Whether there's enough memory for the server and the application, enough Java heap. And if not, it might happen that it starts using swap memory, which can slow the application significantly, or even crash the application with out-of-memory errors. Disk space is very often an issue for application malfunctions or performance degradation, mostly when the default Jira Confluence backup generation remains turned on and the disk becomes cluttered with old backups after a while. Log files can also grow in size, and all files from an upgrade can also remain on the server, often taking a lot of space. And the database, that's a whole nother story. If you have a database running on the same server as the application, the database throughput might not be an issue. However, once you use a dedicated database server, network speed might cause the application to slow down, which becomes very visible, for example, during indexing. It's also beneficial in this case to put your indexes on an SSD disk. There are tools recommended by Atlassian that test both the database speed and disk access speed, so you can run them to determine possible problems. Diagnosing some other server issues is easier if you use monitoring tools, but even if you don't, there's a free app called Java Melody. It's an add-on that constantly says that it's not supported, but it is. You simply have to download it outside of the Atlassian Marketplace on the vendor's pages that monitors CPU, RAM, and database utilization. The last point is upgrading. We have already talked about how to upgrade, and now for the why. So why should it be a part of your regular maintenance process? On cloud, you don't need to upgrade, but you do need to upgrade on data center and server. If you do, these upgraded applications provide new features, security patches, bug fixes, and a better overall performance. One of the largest jumps in performance was when Jira 8 came out with its updating indexing engine. You can find the comparison of Jira 7 and 8 in Atlassian's release notes for the version 8. Now, the upgrade process should be performed for each application at least once or twice a year, and always on demo or staging instance first. In case of an upgrade taking a significant amount of downtime, such as in enterprise environments where you can't really afford to have a lot of downtime, perhaps because you're running an important service desk on your instance, Atlassian provides so-called enterprise releases or long-term releases. These are major versions that backport various bug fixes and security fixes as they are found and resolved in later versions without the need to upgrade the applications to get them. For example, one of the latest Jira Software enterprise releases was, I think, 8.5. So if a security patch was discovered in 8.7, it would get backported into the enterprise or long-term release. Right, and here's a few links to resources I recommend for if you want to learn more about maintaining your Atlassian stack. There's a pretty good article called Spring Cleaning for Jira, and it covers which objects to clean and how to do so, and how to do so if you don't have any add-ons. It's quite useful. There's two books from Rachel Wright and Matt Dorr that cover best practices on maintaining your Jira. And I've also included a link to the YouTube video about the Jira performance and what can it be affected by. Thank you for your time and for your attention. And right now, I'd like to give some time and space to you. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas about what we've been through. So ask away, and we'll be answering the questions in chat, and you can also ask a question in the session. Okay, so there's a question from Laude. How do you remove users that never signed in? Personally, I use the add-on called, the add-on user management for Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket, because it creates a filter of the users that haven't signed in, even if you use only its trial version. So it's if you're considering doing a cleanup of your users, it might be a good time to try the add-on out, as you can remove it at any time in the trial version. You have a list of the last logins in your user administration interface, but regrettably there's no filtering. So yeah, I would recommend using the add-on. Would you like to add anything to what we've been through in this webinar? Perhaps a recommendation on your own to share with the other users? So there's again a question from Brittany as if we recommend any form of official training for Atlassian product owners. I've seen certificates from Atlassian, and what is most popular recommended? Well, I had for server and for data center, I have had a great experience with the ACP 500 certification, which explains all the things that you need to be aware of when administrating the infrastructure of the Atlassian toolset, but that is aimed mainly for system admins and operations or DevOps people. So for people that actually worked in the application most of the time, as in the application admins, I have had a good experience with the ACP 100 certification that will teach you about what can you do or what can you configure or set in the application from the point of view of the application admin. There's also a fairly cheap certification for project admins. Those are the people that set up workflows and set up screens or fields. I think it's ACP 600 perhaps. Well, is the first certification you see. I think it's project management in Jira Cloud or project management in Jira Server. So it largely matters on what would you like to learn as an Atlassian product owner. I can recommend these three based on the level of engagement you have with the Atlassian ecosystem. The 600 for project admin, the 100 for the application admin, and the 500 for the sysadmin. And there's also cloud counterparts for the 100 and 600 certifications, so they're applicable for cloud too. There's a question from Luisa if we'll be sending the recording. Yes, we'll be sending it. I'm not sure about the time. Maybe Michelle could chime in here. I'm not sure when the recording is sent out, but it's definitely sent out, so you don't have to worry. What did I say before 600? Well, 100, 500, and 600. And 100 and 600 has a cloud counterpart too. Oh yeah, I think it's ACP, P as in person, ACP certifications. If you Google Atlassian certifications, you can find a list of all of the certifications that there are. I believe there's also a Confluence administration certification, which helps when administering Confluence. And recently I've been extending my certifications, and I have found a great badge extension, because you can extend your certifications with so-called badges. And these badges are like small modules with a particular theme or a particular topic. So one of these badges was called Scaling Jira, and I have really enjoyed it because it explained all the things that a sysadmin should know. For example, what can affect a slow instance, or how to federate Atlassian instances. So that was a very good badge, actually. I very much recommend it. It was called Scaling Jira. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, I would like to again thank you for your time and for listening. And well, I hope you learned something new, because there was a lot of material, and well, each of it is important, I would say. So thanks a lot. Okay, have a great day. Bye.